and actually how do you move from the paper to actually making all the actions work. So I want to present to you our framework on how we are doing it. I have to correct Elena, but because at the moment it's not finished yet, so we're still working on it, and it's an ongoing process. So it's not that we have reached our end goal. So not everything will be developed completely, but it's a good starting point to have the structure that you want. Our main objective was to have one approach for everything, so that when we buy trucks, when we buy paper, when we buy pens, when we buy drinks, that we have one approach, one methodology, so that every purchase that is done within the city of Ghent can be made sustainable as good as possible. So one of the first initiatives that we took, well, it wasn't the first initiative, but it was one of the main drivers to push it to a higher level, was to have a sustainable procurement strategy. We have had this for quite a while now, but in 2014, when we organized the ÖKPI, we renewed it, and we also asked our city council to acknowledge it and to make sure that it's that you have political backing. The political backing for your sustainable procurement strategy is probably one of the most important factors to make sure that sustainability is a hot item at the table in the city council. It was also a good starting point for us with ÖKPI to actually put it in the spotlight and to have some emphasis on our strategy. Well, what are our main achievements since we had this is that we had a clear strategic agenda, assisted by the defined key performance indicators and clear targets. This was made. This was the approach that we followed. I have inserted a small quote, which says, "In God we trust, and all others must bring data." This actually describes pretty well what we have been doing within the city of Ghent, to work from methodological, to develop principles that are applicable throughout the city. So we work from a quality management perspective, and we want to make everything measurable, so that we can see if our actions do matter and if what we're doing is the right thing. So some of the aspects that we have been doing on a more contract level, you see that we have sustainable festival organization, we have sustainable city lighting, cradle to cradle certified cleaning products for all our buildings, and of course the electrical and CNG vehicles, among many others, but those are some nice examples of what we have been doing within the city of Ghent. Well, coming now to how we actually are going forward with this strategy and how we want to make the strategy an operational practice. We have a 7-step procedure that you can see here. This is actually, I call this my washing machine, and I'm trying to lobby it within the city of Ghent so that everyone gets to know this image. What we're actually trying to do, and you see the 7 steps. The first step is the one that I've shown before, is that it's really important that you have your strategy, and that your strategy is generally accepted within the organization and also politically. But then, how do you make it operational? We have these steps that I will go into detail in the coming slides. So the first step is, what are your priorities? You have to define those in the procurement strategy. You can see it there also with the signatures. I've included it as such because those signatures are one of the main elements that also make it have the value that it has right now. This is a bit in detail. You see that we have focused on a lot of aspects, and not just on green public procurement, but that we're also trying just sustainable procurement as a whole, also with regards to employment, innovation, and also to efficiency goals within the organization. This can be a good starting point or work as an inspiration if you ever need anything. And if you have questions regarding to those, I would say do not hesitate to ask, because it took us a lot of time to make it as such, to have the right wordings, which is really important. A lot of people focus on the words, so once you have that set, it's almost as it's written in stone. A second part is the second step is that you have to make it measurable, because the strategy is really high level, and for a lot of people, if you talk about the strategy, then they still have a lot of questions. But what do you mean by this? How much do we want to reduce it? How by doing what? How can it work? So the question we asked ourselves is, okay, how can we know that we are doing the right things, and also that we're doing the things right at the same time, so that we're actually aiming at the right place and doing it the right way. So that's an exercise that you have to do with your policy advisors. For example, we did this with a working group of people from our environmental department, people from our work department who are involved in the social economy sector. So we have involved all stakeholders to define what they are trying to say when they are speaking about energy efficiency, or if they are waste reduction, or if we want to have disadvantaged groups into the labor markets. What does that mean, and how can we measure that we're doing the right things? So, for example, in the case of furniture, we are actually trying to reuse our furniture. So we've set up a system, and we've defined what do we want to do. We actually want to have savings by reusing our furniture, but also have an impact on waste, but also on resources. Because if you reuse your furniture, then you can also avoid that you have to buy new furniture, which is also demanding on the environment and on the resources. What do we want to achieve? So you see two steps. We've asked ourselves, what do we want to achieve with this? And also, what do our customers, our stakeholders want to achieve with the furniture? They want, of course, they want good service, but also if it's a saving for them on their budget, then it's also interesting, and they also want the awareness. So it's quite important that you are aligned with your internal customer. So it's a lot of conversations and meetings on what do you all want to achieve with a certain strategic goal. Then our third step is that we want to make sure that sustainability is not an option. If you just write it on a piece of paper and you leave it there, then only the people that are really interested and motivated in sustainability will go and actively look for it. But you also want to trigger all the other buyers into using the tools that you are making available. But you also have to make sure that you're not overly pushing it, because as you know, not every purchase can be green, socially responsible, and economical. So you have to choose which ones are most practical. For example, in our case, we have realized that there are some categories of procurement in which social economy is more applicable than in others. So it means that you're actually going for the big coconuts, as we say it here, instead of focusing on the small peanuts, so that you can make an impact where it matters most. With these policies, we also try to get the backing from the city council, so that we can have a policy that is applicable for the complete administration within the city of Ghent. So the fourth step that we are implementing is that, or that we have implemented, is called a strategic roadmap, which is what turns your policies into practice. So, for example, I've mentioned before that our social economy, we've defined that certain categories are more applicable. So this means that when we have a contract coming up within, for example, painting of buildings, then it will become in scope of a certain strategic goal, and the strategic roadmap will be the element where you can see on a contract level for which strategic goals this contract can be important. So it allows you to choose your battles and to actually see where you can focus on. It also helps our contract or our procurer to know what to focus on and what not to focus on. In this slide you can see somewhat what it looks like. On the left hand side you actually see the contract details of the contracts that are coming up. This one is in Dutch. It's so the first few columns where you see contracts and pipeline, the green box, those are the ones coming up. And then on the right side, you see the headers of the columns mean ecological, socially, and economically. Those are actually those reflect our strategy, and you can see that every strategic goal is included and has its separate column in this document. So from this we can, for example, see that a certain contract, the third line, for example, has a strong focus on CO2 neutral deliveries and on social economy and also on local economy. So this helps the procurer to actually see, okay, what kind of criteria would I have to include in my tender to achieve what our city council is actually aiming for. This also allows us to see if we're missing certain spots, if we're focusing too much on the ecological aspect, if we should focus more on the social aspect or the economical aspect. So it's a good overview from this point, and also allows you to compare contracts over time, from one contract to another contract. Can you see, are we improving? Are we having higher demands? What happened? Why are we not asking as much in this contract? Can we learn from past contracts? It's really important for the strategic roadmap that there's a lot of market research going on before completing this document, because you can set your ambitions, but if the market is not able to provide the products at the same level of ambition that you are setting it, then the story ends quite early. So you have to make sure that the market knowledge is there, and that you have the market involved in this exercise. Then the fifth step already is that of course we are asking a lot from our procurers, and we also want to help them, because a procurer is almost the superhuman, knowing a lot about the legal aspects. He has to be a good
Sorry to interrupt you, Thomas. We got a question. I didn't say. Please keep your questions for the end, and we'll ask them at.
following is that they are sustainability experts. So what we're trying to do is help them and make the things easier for them. So with criteria documents, for example, so that if we're asking them to include elements on CO2 neutral deliveries, that they know how they can do such a thing in a contract tender. But we also want to help them with tools to monitor the performance afterwards. So there's a complete tool set that we're trying to develop, which ranges from all of the aspects in the procurement process. Then I'm going to the sixth step. The fifth step. So this is what we mean. We have the CO2 calculator for deliveries, which allows also our suppliers to calculate what the impact is from their delivery profile and what the impact would be if they take certain actions. Also, we have a contract monitoring tool that we are trying to develop at the moment, so that certain actions can be monitored in a close relation between the supplier and the procurer. Then the sixth step, and probably the most important one, is that you see that we have those managers dashboards that we've developed, or those key performance indicators in the first and one of the first steps is that we now measure the impact of our actions, and we see that what is happening. Are we actually saving? How much waste are we, in this case of the recovery furniture, how much are we saving? How much waste are we avoiding? How much resources utilization are we avoiding? So it's important to measure it so that you can report it, and that you know if certain actions had the impact that you desired, or if you have to change your actions, because it's an ongoing process. And what we're trying to do, we have to have 1 page per strategic goal, so that we can also get back to our city council on this, and to get their backing, to get their political support on what we're trying to achieve. Because sometimes some decisions have to be taken at a higher level, but as you know, that then you need the data to provide the backing for those decisions, and that's what we're also trying to do, to make it an objective story. And then the 7th step is that we're actually trying that we go all over again, and we improve and optimize. So also what we've achieved, that we try to communicate it, because sustainable procurement is, of course, a process. It's change management. It's communication. You have to get everyone on board, and the more you communicate, the more that you actually create the awareness. So it doesn't stop anywhere. You have to communicate all the time, so you have to keep communicating, and also learn from your mistakes. Don't be afraid to also communicate those mistakes, because if you learn from them, those are the most valuable ones. So to quickly recap is how can an organization such as ØKPI help us? So they can help to develop new methodologies on target setting and reporting, so that cross-city-wise, cross-authority-wise, that we have similar objectives, and that we know that we can exchange data, best practices, figures, that we can do benchmarking. It's also a valuable tool that they can create a linking between cities and organizations to help each other, because in the end, most cities are trying to do the same thing. So some cities are further in the process than others. So there's always something that you can learn from another city, or you can share and combine the knowledge and the development costs or development resources. So that's an important aspect that ØKPI can facilitate. Next to all of that, we have labels and standards, and increasing possibilities and opportunities for procurers to use those labels and standards. So ØKPI can help and develop and make them known or publicly available on a broader scale. And then, of course, they can communicate results and best practices worldwide. Of course, also the legislation, what we're having now, we have the European directive and the new national laws being implemented. But of course, it's an important role for ØKPI to be part at the discussion table when new directives are being made and when the discussions are being held. So what's happening for Ghent on the near horizon? We want to make the reporting embedded. So we have started with a smaller scope within one department, and we want to make sure that we can have now a complete city overview on this SPP reporting. We want to use the CO2 calculation tool to evaluate different strategies. And for example, we have also the contract on fair trade working close, having a stronger focus on the ILOs, the international labor agreements, and also, as I mentioned, we're busy developing a custom sustainable contract management tool. Well, that's a mouthful. Then some of our targets that we're trying to achieve. As I've said, we've tried to make our strategic goals objective by putting actual targets on them so that we know what we want to achieve and that we can see if our actions are actually reducing it by 10%, the CO2 emissions, or if we have 10% growth on contracts awarded to the social economy sector. And with that, I think my presentation has ended. So if you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I hope it was a bit clear, but the goal was to provide you some insight on how we have tried to have a structured approach to implementing sustainability. So thank you for your attention, and if you have questions, please do not hesitate.
Thank you, Thomas. There were a couple of questions in this time. I have been writing them down, and now I also, for the rest, haven't asked or haven't thought of asking yet. We open now 5 minutes of questioning. You can send them to me, and I will tell them out loud here in the webinar. One of the questions that Ulrika was asking from the Energy Agency of Nanette, if I'm telling it right, it's in the north of Sweden. She was, if you can go back to your slide with the strategy that you had with these indicators and this Excel file where you were mentioning we go through all the procurements that we have and we assess in which procurement we should. There you go, that one.
Yeah.
So what is exactly? Well, I had a question for that, and then I will link it with Ulrika's question. How often do you do this strategy? Do you do it like once a year and then communicate everyone, or do you do it for every procurement? You think about, where can we put our priorities?
So what we have is certain contracts, that you will have to renew and that are running for example, 4 years. So you know when they will be renewed. So we ask our procurers to have this list ready for the coming year, so they can actually make a planning for the next year. What will be at the table? What contracts will be made up? What tenders will be written? Because it allows us to get involved in the process early enough. Because a lot of times when you don't have this kind of document, then you get the procurers asking you questions. So I need some. Then I ask you, I need sustainability advice, and I would like to have it by tomorrow because the contract or the tender is going to the city council for approval. So by doing this and having this session twice a year, it allows us to have a view on most of the contracts. Of course, for some contracts which are not renewable, that we're having single purchases, we're doing this more at an ad hoc based level, that we're asking all our policy advisors to give their input.
Okay, and the question, what exactly does the numbers here on the right side, what do they mean? Exactly, so you have 4, 10, 6, right?
That means that it's a certain ambition level. So when we have, for example, a 2, that means that we will try to have these criteria involved. If possible, then a 4 will be we will have the criteria involved, but then mostly in selection criteria or tendering criteria. A 6 or a 10 is then that we have those criteria, but that they are mandatory, that they have to do this. So you see, it's more of an ambition level on what can we do and how certain is it that we will implement it. So the 2 and the 4 are more of an option for the supplier, but then when we have 6 or 10, that means that we're really certain that the market is able to provide it. So that we say, okay, you have to perform, or you have to have CO2 neutral deliveries. So for example, when we have the third line was CO2 neutral delivery of sandwiches for our meetings and such, then we said, okay, it has to be done with a 0 impact, so that we currently have this with a bike carrier. So that's what the 10 or the 6 or the 4 means.
Okay. Ulrika, you wanted to ask something else? Are you unmuted you?
Hi, Thomas and Elena. Yes, thank you for the explanation about the numbers. Then I understand what they mean. I was also wondering, it's the procurers that provide you with the upcoming procurements, then you later on put in your strategic roadmap.
It is indeed the procurers that provide the contracts which are coming up, but it's the policy domains which are also reflecting on what the ambitions are, because it's the policy domains that, for example, in the case of social economy, mentioned that painting of buildings and renovation of buildings is something that is within scope, or cleaning is within scope. So they also have their say in what the ambition is of the city council, and it's a dialogue between the procurer and the policy domain, because we also realize that if we allow the policy to set the targets, then probably we would end up with a 10 on every aspect. So the procurer is there to have the reality check on what is possible within the market.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another question, it refers to the measuring. You said it was really important to measure the impact that you're having, that you don't only set your strategy, your goals, but you also go back to them every year and say, okay, now this has been working out, and or this hasn't have the effects that we thought it would. Well, some time ago in February, we organized a Train the Train seminar for this project, and Els Stebbins from the city of Flanders, she showed us her monitoring system. No? They put it in place. It was quite complex, and this way they could really easily evaluate the impacts or the achievements that they were having every year, no? Because they had this system in place. So I thought I would like to ask you to provide us more information about this. How are you really measuring your impact? How did you put your system in place?
Well, at the moment, our system is quite labor intensive, that we're actually asking all the procurers for the information, and that we consolidate this within within Excel file. So we don't have an automatic system for it yet, but we're trying to look in how we can and make it in a system that is easier and less labor intensive. But for us, since we're still in the development phase of all these measurement goals, we didn't make it into such a system yet. Well, I don't know if that partially answers your question already, or
well, it starts.
so what we're trying to do now is that we 2 times a year that we try to get all the information from the procurers and to consolidate them and then get back to them and report all the data that they have provided, but also with the policy advisors if they see if it's going in the right direction. For now, we've taken the approach to get data which is manageable, so that doesn't create the workload that is too intensive from a reporting perspective, because we want to make sure that the people keep reporting and that they're not focusing on, oh, this is a heavy burden to report or it's impossible to calculate. We wanted to avoid all those discussions and taken the step that we're focusing mostly on the number of contracts that are actually working on a certain aspect. So for example, in this case, the number of contracts that we are rewarding or awarding to the social economy sector.
Okay, thank you. And now that brings me also to the question, how did your procurers find this whole new approach? Was it did you find a proactive attitude, or was it more reactive that you really had to explain this very well to bring them on board? How was this whole process from changing the way you were used to do your procurements?
As you mentioned, it's indeed a lot of communicating and educating on how it can be done. Where I wouldn't say that we have found the perfect approach already, because you can say, okay, this is what the city council wants, so you have to do it, or you can try to make sure that they have their own impulse or their own reasons why they are doing it. So it's a bit of a change management, and that's a thing that I'm afraid I have to admit that I have been overlooking a bit. You need to be really in good contact with your procurers so that they know what they are doing and why you are doing all these things. So I would say communication is key in this one, and getting them, onboarding them along the way as soon as possible, actually, and also making sure that they know why certain things are requested of them, because we know that there's a lot of burden that we're asking, that a lot of effort that we're asking them to make sure that the contracts they had before are also sustainable, and then also reporting on them. So yes, it does take quite a lot of time and effort, and it should not be overlooked in your project plan to involve the procurers early on in the process.
Okay, of course. And what about from the other side? What about the high level, the decision makers? How did you manage to get the necessary support that you needed to put these policies in place?
Well, of course, there's always the city of Ghent. They have the city council has always been quite in favor of sustainability goals on a city-wide level. So the translation to a sustainable procurement strategy was no big issue, actually, but getting the communication and the backing proved quite essential for us, and that was for us in 2014 when we held ØKPI, and then we publicly presented the new strategy with the presence of the mayor and a few deputy mayors. So it does help to give it some spotlights what you're actually trying to do, and then it gets the attention instead of just passing it through the city council as a piece of paper which needs their approval. So how did we achieve that? Yeah, actually putting into the spotlight what you're doing, what you're working on, so that they know what they are signing and what the importance is and what they can expect later on in the process from this piece of paper.
Okay, thank you. I have one last question. Of course, if anyone else wants to ask something else, please send a question to me, and I will speak it out loud. You mentioned that well, you're using many tools. For instance, you mentioned the total cost of ownership or LCC tools, and because this is a very interesting topic, and not so many people are actually using them yet. Are you actually using LCC, or how do you find? Is it too complex yet, or can you use it in some easy or small budget procurements? I'm just curious about that.
Well, we try to implement the total cost of ownership in some cases, not yet in the really technical aspects where we include environmental costs and such, and a lot of exterior costs or external costs. But what we try to do with, of course, with the electronic devices, there it's quite easy. If you have a certain utilization profile, to set up some sort of TCO calculation, which allows you to calculate, okay, what would be the total cost of buying this appliance or another appliance, and then how you can favor certain sustainable solutions by including the energy cost, the electricity cost in the life cycle.
Okay. Okay. Good. I think there are no further questions. So I would really like to thank you for taking the time to talk to us, Thomas. It was really interesting. I personally really loved your washing machine. I will help you in the loving. And of course, I will, if you don't mind, I will share your contact detail with the people that join us, and also with some other people that couldn't join for the short notice. And maybe they can contact you directly and ask you some questions, if it's okay.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
That's okay with me.
They won't spam you, I promise. They're very cautious people. So thank you very much again, and everyone. I will have a recorded version uploaded in the website of this webinar. I'll send you the details, and if you just need any information, any further issues, just don't hesitate to ask me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.